Okay. Hello to everyone. Can you listen to me? Hello. Okay. Then I'm going to start. Wait, please. One moment. My name is Carlos Alberto Oro Villamizar. I am a professor of economics at the Universidad del Atlántico Medio here in Spain, in the Canary Islands. And today I'm going to present you my work, which is called A Sectoral Analysis of a Developing Countries' Export in the Context of Trade Integrations, Evidence from Colombia. Before, I would like to say thank you to my friend Professor José Luis Oreiro for inviting me to this important Congress. And then, I'm going to start. First, the organization of the slides. I'm going to start with a short introduction talking about the objectives. Then I'm going to tell you some facts about the Colombian trade liberalization process. After that, I'm going to present you the methodological approach, some results and discussions, and finally some conclusions. Then regarding the introductions, the objectives of this work is to assess the impact of the Colombian trade openness, the Colombian trade liberalization process, which have been carried out mainly through the signing of regional trade agreements, and we are going to determine it at disaggregated levels. We use data on export flows at disaggregated levels following the standard international trade classification, revision 4. Findings will allow us to determine which is the effect of the regional trade agreement factor on the Colombian exports by economic sectors. And then the relevance of the sectoral export analysis is that Colombia depends to a big extent on his full exports. And Colombia has a very important goal, which is replacing these exports with non-full exports. Then now some facts about the Colombian trade liberalization process. Colombia is one of the Latin American countries which have presented one of the highest economic growth rates in the last 3 decades, I can say. Then the Colombian trade integration or economic trade integration started in the late 60s when Colombia became a member of the Andean community through the Cartagena Treaty, and then when Colombia became a member of the General Agreement on Trade and Tariff in 1981. But this process of trade integration was intensified after 1991, when Colombia decided to follow a path of trade liberalization promoted by the Washington Consensus. Then Colombia went from an import substitution system to reduce or even to eliminate trade barriers, tariff and non-tariff barriers. Then at that time, the Colombian policymaker intention was to make a more productive and efficient economy. And to do so, the country signed various trade agreements with different scopes. But in the national debate, there is no consensus on the success of this strategy, especially on the effect of regional trade agreements in the promotion of export flows and also in the national economic growth. And now you are going to see a graph or a chart where you can see Colombian exports by economic sectors at constant millions of USD from 2007 to 2020. Here you can see that oil and mining goods in this color are the most important group of exports of Colombia, and then food and live animals. But this is clearly the most important export groups where we can find oil and other minerals. And some facts about this. The last charts show the predominance of exports composed by mineral fuels lubricants, and other materials over the rest. It shows a great predominance in the country's export baskets between 2011 and 2014, almost 2/3 of total exports. It coincided with the high international price of oils. However, it decreased since 2015 until 2020. Other important groups that compose the Colombian export basket is goods from Section 0, foods and live animals, as I said before, and Section 5, chemicals and related products. And there are other other group of exports where the amount of these exports are very low, such as goods from Section 1 and Section 4. Now, the methodological approach. To assess the determinants of the Colombian exports at disaggregated levels, we use the gravity model of trade, or the trade gravity model. This model, as you all know, was based on the law of universal gravity, proposed by Sir Isaac Newton. And then this model states that the volume of trade between two economies is directly proportional to the product of their economic masses and inversely proportional to their physical distance. Then, usually, the gravity equation is specified like this, as you can see. And it is also important to state that in this study, we use the gravity model as a model to determine or to model the determinants of the Colombian exports, but not as a structural gravity model, just because because of the matrix type. Okay, well, here you can see some information about the variables that we include in our study. Where we can see Colombian exports by SITC categorizations. Then we use 10 groups of exports, and we estimate the determinants of the Colombian exports individually by each by groups. Then we also include some control variables such as physical distance, contiguity, common language, landlocked countries, common legal origin, if Colombian and his partners have or ever had the same colonizer, the World Trade Organization variable, the regional trade agreement, which is the most important variable in our study. And also we implement a gross value added of Colombian in constant USD and in the Colombian partner, because we are working in a sectoral analysis. And also we include approach of labor competitiveness or labor productivity, which is, we said the relationship between gross value added between labor force, as I said before, as a proxy of labor productivity. And then the model that we use is the one that you can see. But more facts about our methodological approach. The empirical research considers all the destination countries for Colombian exports by sector. There are 201 countries between 2007 and 2020. Then the matrix type is 1 exporter, 201 importers. That's why we don't implement a structural gravity model, because it doesn't have the condition to have a multi-country analysis. Okay, but it is also useful when you can model exports of one specific countries to its partner. Then we follow the disaggregated gravity estimation proposed by Anderson and Yotov. And as I said before, we used disaggregated export data according to the SITC for 2 digits categorization. Then we estimate 10 different models. The equation uses random effects and is clustered by country pairs. We also use the Poisson pseudo-maximum likelihood because according to Santos Silva and Tenreiro, it's the most convenient estimator for gravity models because it is consistent with heterogeneity, endogeneity, and other econometric drawbacks. And finally, the PPML estimator is very important because this estimator can include observation with 0 values, which is very, very useful when you work with disaggregated data, because in this type of studies, it usually might lack trade flows or even data for some years. Well, now I'm going to present you some results, some discussions, and well, as we have a short period of time to present our discussions, I'm going to talk only about the main findings. Okay, first, it is essential to highlight the impact created by the labor productivity factor. As I said before, it is a proxy that wants to measure the impact of productivity on Colombian exports. And we found a very prominent effect of this variable on most of the Colombian exports by economic sectors. Then food, life, and animals exports are promoted by landlocked and regional trade agreement factor, but it's hurt by the continent variable. It means that Colombian exports increases if the partner has access to the sea as expected, but decreases if the partner is located on the American continent. And then, as I said before, it shows a very important effect or positive effect of the regional trade agreement variable. And this is important because, as I also said before, this is the second most important group of exports in the country's export basket. Then the mineral food, lubricants, and related material group, which is the most important group of exports in Colombia, almost 2/3 of Colombian exports in some recent years, is highly promoted by landlocked variables, which indicates that most of these goods are sold to countries with access to the sea. Another important finding in this work is that the regional trade agreement variables prominently harms these exports, being the only sporting group of export to experience this negative effect. This mainly explains the deepening of the Colombia's trade balance, considering the importance of this type of goods within the country's export basket. Well, in this case, in this group of exports, the proxy of labor productivity also hinders these exports, suggesting that if labor productivity increases, these goods exports decrease, which will contradict the Krugman-Dietzy and Stiglitz model. And it's not logical, or this result is not as we expected. But as I said before, it is only for this specific group. Another group of exports, chemical and related products, are promoted by contiguity, common legal origins, continent, and World Trade Organization variables. Then these goods are exported to countries located in America, share a border and language with Colombia, and belong to the World Trade Organization. And then it explains why these exports go to the United States, Brazil, Ecuador, Venezuela, and Peru. Then the manufactured goods, classified chiefly by materials, group of products are promoted by the contiguity, sibling, and especially the World Trade Organization variables. Then these exports mostly go to Andean community countries. And the machinery and transport equipment exports are promoted by contiguity, common legal origin, siblings, and regional trade agreements factors, explaining why most of them are exported to Latin American Integration Association member countries and especially to the Andean community countries. Then some conclusions. Most of these groups, most of the groups, except group 8 and 9, are not simultaneously promoted by World Trade Organization variables and regional trade agreement variables, indicating that this effect is not concurrent. The effects created by the World Trade Organization and regional trade agreement variables. Another conclusion is that the negative effect of the Colombian trade integration process in his exports is harmful on the group of export composed by oil and minerals. Group of export number 3, explaining the deepening of the country's trade balance. It's observed that trade openness has promoted the export of goods other than those defined in the group 3, either through regional trade agreement effect or factor or the World Trade Organization factor. Also, the productivity proxy is a significant driver of exports for most groups or for most of the groups, except group 3 and 9, and then it calls the attention of Colombian policymakers at increasing labor productivity because it is a significant driver of most of the Colombian exports. Consequently, we can affirm that in general terms, the openness or trade openness has harmed total Colombian exports. But if we delve into the sectoral export analysis, it shows that 9 of 10 groups of products benefit from trade integration factors defining in the study, which are regional trade agreement or World Trade Organization variable. Then thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to be available for some questions.
Can I ask now?
Yes, I think.
I just a simple question about your presentation is about the zero value in the base in database.
Yes.
What was you include or no include zero in the database?
Yes, yeah, the gravity models were usually estimated through the OLS estimator, but with this new estimator, which is called pseudo maximum likelihood or Poisson pseudo maximum likelihood, it has the ability to include observations with zero values. Sorry. Then it well this well this estimator is very important in for many reasons, but mm, it is especially important in our study since we have many zero values in when we study in disaggregated levels. And it is also the most popular estimator nowadays.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. . Okay. Okay, no questions then? Okay, thank you very much for your time, and see you later. Thank you.
Well, good morning to our presenters in the chair of the original section. And I would like to thank the organizers, and especially Professor Luis Costa Oreiro of the Third International Workshop for the opportunity. And our paper is about the structural change in Latin America and income distribution, theory and evidence. The authors are me, Wallace Pereira, at Federal University of Pará, Douglas Alencar, Fabrício Mício, Minas Gerais, Federal University of Minas Gerais, and Frederico Gonzaga James Jr., Federal University of Minas Gerais. The presentation schedule is first purpose of the paper, through theoretical frameworks, after data and methodology, and so finally I show the preliminary results. Well, the purpose of the article is investigate the role of income distribution in structural change as measured by manufacturing employment. And to investigate this theme, you use a personal distribution of income by Gini and Palma ratio, and for functional distribution of income, we use label share. And why? Why? Hypothesis is the very personal very personal income distribution, and the economic policy in favor of the wage is capable to stimulate the demand and inducing manufacturing growth. This question is very important because the structural change is one of the central themes in the literature on economic growth and development. Structural change in literature of economic growth and development show that the sectorial reallocations of labor and capital can promote an increase in investment and the average productivity in the economy. The buffer and the structural change matter. So the manufacturing sector, when operating with increasing returns to scale, determine statics and dynamics gains of the scale and the economy. So industrialization is important, especially for Latin America. In Latin American case, there was strong concentration of income, especially from the 1960s and onwards. However, Latin America began to deindustrialization, have a deindustrialization from the 1980s onwards. Therefore, the industrialization did not deliver the expected result, which is a high per capita income and high productivity and endogenous technological advancement. So, in terms of the theoretical frameworks, the growth literature highlights the importance of the manufacturing, and basically the Anglo-Saxon and Latin American structuralism approach stands out. Both approaches, as Anglo-Saxon and Latin American theory, defended the industrialization as a way to promote economic development. and more Caldor laws of the growth are emblematic, especially because the three laws of the Caldor, or law of the growth. So, from the point of the view of income distribution, there was two approaches. The first is personal income distribution, measured by Gini, Palma, and Phil indices, where the Gini index is one of the most widely used income distribution indicators, and numerically it ranges from 0 to 1. The value 0 represents the situation of equality, and the value 1 is the opposite. That is maximal concentration of the health. The Palma index is an alternative to Gini index and focused on difference between upper and lower income brackets. That is a compares the income of the richest 10% of the population with an income of the poorest 40% for the population. So this about personal distribution. But about the functional distribution, it's important to show that there is three generations. The first generations of models assume the following hypotheses. 1, perfect competition. 2, price-taking agents. And 3, economic operation at full production capacity. The second generation assumes the following hypotheses. The degree of the use, first is the degree of the use, the installed capacity is endogenous. 2, there is idle capacity. And 3, the economic environment is oligopoly. The scope of the approach contemplates the possibility that income distribution starting from profit towards wages generates economic growth. So the third generation models consider the degree of installed capacity and the profit margin as distinct arguments within the investment function. As a result, there is a possibility of the increase in real rates having a possibility impacted on the economy's rate of profit. So, the part of the data and methodology, we use a sample of 23 countries for the period to 2004 to 2017. And we chose this period because of the disponibility of the variable, especially share of the wage income, and we use the fixed affected and GNN system econometrics. So the indicators and the variable used is in the table in the screen. The variable was Gini index, Palma ratio, share of the wage income, GDP per capita, mensuring productivity, capital flow, institutional development is a proxy about the institution, and economic open. The strategy, empirical strategy, was following empirical models. Oh my God, the equations disappearing in my presentation. I don't understand why, but well. A variable is interesting is Gini and Palma index, beside the personal concentration income. So the Gini and Palma index is expected that the results reveal an inverse relationship the higher the Gini and Palma index, the smaller the structural change in favor of the industrialization tends to be. That is, societies with high income concentration tend to delay industrial development. With regard to the functional distribution of income expressed by the label share variable, a positive relationship is expected. That is, the polity in favor of the weights tends to encourage the structural change in favor of the manufacturing. So, preliminary results show that when using fixed effect for Gini, for the model with Gini, when we apply the fixed effect method, we obtain the expected result. Increase in income concentration has a negative impact on the expansion of the manufacturing play. Threatening for endogeneity, the result remains the same. In other words, income concentration negatively affected structural change in favor of industrialization. So when workers don't have incomes, better incomes, it's impossible that the workers make an investment in education, in other quality of the life. When the same is observed for the Palma ratio indicator, it's important to note that the change is the coefficients is a very small, but the same is observed. So the Palma ratio show that negative impact of the expansion of the manufacturing. And now, when we show the label share, when we consider the functional distribution of income, we have interesting results. When the model is a fixed effect, the result shows that the share of the weights is in income has a negative impact on the expansion of the manufacturing. Therefore, they indicates that negative effect in the structural change. But, however, threatening for endogeneity, the result changes. That is the participation that weights is income has a positive impact on the structural change in favor of the manufacturing. So the result is very interesting because and literature is a little controversial, but when we use a fixed effect, we have a negative impact in the manufacturing, but when we threaten the endogeneity of the model, we have a positive impact and label share. So it's necessary more studies for understand this process. In preliminary results show that it is necessary improve the model, econometrics model, and improve researches about the film. So the authors will be very grateful and the critics and contributions because this question about is very important to understand what the kind of the polity is necessary to promote the growth, economic growth, and promote the industrialization of Latin America. So as synthesizing and preliminary results is presented now that I speak. And thank you. Thank you. This is my results, preliminary results. and I would like to thank everyone that's watched this presentation. Thank you.